Would like to call the Peoria Public Schools District 150 Board of Education Committee of the whole meeting for September 24th, 2012 to order. Would you please call the roll? Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Any announcements this evening? Just one for housekeeping matters. The budget hearing tonight is scheduled for 7 p.m. We will move through the board's business, and then at 7 p.m. we will suspend whatever we're doing on the meeting and conduct the budget hearing at that time. Next, yes, Ms. Casa.
Good evening. Just wanted to let everyone know that a couple meetings ago, there were teachers that came before the board and expressed what a great thing their PD training was for IP. I had a teacher personally contact me in regards to how excited they are in regards to the program. So we know that what was learned is being put in place, and the children in her classroom are so excited. So if there's any teachers out there and they've implemented it, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Ms. Kosick. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our last meeting of September 10th, 2012. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Mr. Patel? Aye. Mr. Boyd?
Aye.
Mrs. O'Brien? Aye. Mrs. Cosby? Mr. Crawford?
Aye. That takes us down to remarkable rule number 2, respect for learning, talking about the Northmore Garden Project. And growing up.
Good evening. Ms. Malahy, principal for Northmore K-4 school, is here. Back in 2010, Northmore applied for a community foundations grant so that they could create a teaching garden at Northmore. And so they're here to talk about what's been going on the past 2 years and just to give us an update. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I am here also with Northmore parent, Mr. Todd Abercrombie, and he actually has been on board with the outdoor classroom project longer than I have, as I became principal last fall. So we just wanted to outline just a little bit of the history behind it and where we are and where we plan to go.
So when the construction on Northmore it was finished in 2010, it created a courtyard in the center of it that was open to the sky. So it created an opportunity for growing some plants and to put a learning landscape in. So the principal at the time introduced it to the PTO meeting at the time, and to be honest, it was my first PTO meeting I'd ever been to. I had been inspired by a book, read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, and thought I need to be involved in my children's school. Hence, there I was at the meeting, and having known a lot of people in the area that are involved in landscaping and things like that, I thought, hey, I can bring some resources to this project, so I volunteered for it. So in the fall of 2010, the committee of staff and parents was set up to create the outdoor classroom. The vision was to provide students with a opportunity to interact with nature and to integrate lessons from the teachers, particularly like in science and math, into the garden. And we have received some funds to help fund it. The Community Foundation donated some money in the fall of 2010 for materials and supplies. Stock tanks to be used for raised planting beds were purchased. In addition, donations from the city of Peoria in the form of 3 rain barrels, the same rain barrels the city has been selling to homeowners. And also the Peoria Garden Club included a bench and a bird bath. And in the spring of 2011, with kind of a groundbreaking, we had gotten some trees donated and got those planted in that landscape. So, move over to you.
The initial plans included a sundial that was going to be integrated into the plan. It was a little bit of a challenge because we had a slope and we were looking at concrete work, so that kind of caused some time to take a pause and step back. So over the summer, several of us went and started visiting some other outdoor classrooms in the area. We went to Germantown Hills Middle School, which has a very nice garden, and several others in the area, started talking and seeing what this was all about and how we could best use it for us at Northmore. And actually through those visits, probably more importantly, was the connections we made. We've got connections now with the Peoria Area Master Gardeners, Peoria Garden Club, and then also the developers of the Germantown Hills Middle School outdoor classroom, and they are willing to provide the expertise that we lack, the information about soil, plant placement, and low maintenance so that we can make things very manageable. Even silly things as simple as an economical irrigation system using soaker hoses and a timer. We don't want custodial staff to be in charge of this. The only responsibility custodial staff would have would be to maintain the grass in the area which they currently maintain, and it would just be mowing that as they mow right now. All of the gardens would be sustained and maintained by families who are committed. As we can see, even 2 years later, we still have families on board. It's still a PTO agenda item. We will have students also getting out there and working with it as far as planting, developing, maintaining. Staff is very much on board. We look at to have weekend family work days so that we can go ahead and keep things nice and tidy. We envision vegetable beds, flower beds, butterfly gardens. We want things that are going to be interesting as far as, the typical science activities, but in addition, we want to show life cycles. We envision a small pond, and also we want things that are going to offer winter interest for birds and something to look at other than just the grass. We also see this as a big extension of our building. Right now we've used every nook and cranny. We would love to have picnic tables with umbrellas. There is a plan for a pergola, which is very basic, but offers shade so that you can have a class meeting out there. A teacher could teach a lesson. It could also serve as basically kind of an amphitheater, a stage for performances as the hill slopes down. So it's very much naturally conducive to that. In addition, though, the funding is always a key. We are very fortunate that the money was donated and that money had been set aside. We still have that money sitting there because it was allocated for this project. If it would become necessary to get any additional funds, we would do fundraisers with the support of the PTO. It is not our intention that this becomes another burden for the district or anything that anyone else needs to maintain. We look forward also to developing other community relationships and continuing to keep things growing. Where possible, we would love to use district resources such as mulch if that is something that's available. If not, we can go ahead and purchase it. We know we would need to purchase items such as compost and soil and all of those things, but the goal is just to make it very much a usable place and make it functional, and then again extending our building so it offers more functionality for all involved. Are there any questions we can answer?
Ms. Patel.
I don't have any questions, but as always, I am very excited to see another garden going in at one of our schools. It's important not just for the students for the curriculum aspects, but it's good for their health and their learning when they have that exposure to green spaces and natural spaces. And I see you already have some winter interest with the burning bushes, which are so nice for the winter. I thought that when I was looking at your plan. So I'm very excited to come out and see it and see how it's coming along.
Thank you.
Up next, we have the principal for the #1 middle school in the Rolling Acres subdivision, 2 years in a row and running. So, Mr. Mike Barber, if you would come up. Once again, we thank you for hosting us tonight. Mr. Barber is going to share with us, provide us with a demonstration of our Growing Up Ready lab, and also just to talk about the renovations that have occurred over the past year. This is his second year at Rolling Acres, and so once again, thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you for President Crawford, Dr. Lathan, and board members. On behalf of Rolling Acres staff, we want to welcome you to Rolling Acres. We have had significant upgrades over this past year. You are now currently sitting in what we call our cafegimatorium. So it's our cafeteria, our gym, and our auditorium all rolled into one. So we're working on that with Dr. Kinney to try and fix those problems. But we have a brand new tile on the hallway that was replaced. Asbestos tile was removed and new tile put down. Now we, instead of having 7 colors in the hallway, we have 1 color, which is white, which makes it very nice. And then we also have new ceilings in the hallways, which just, in addition to the light, they added lights, which is very bright in our 5th and 6th grade hallway. It just makes it really a welcoming environment, I think, and a nice place for kids to learn. So we do appreciate that upgrades and spending the money in our school. In addition, we have our Growing Up Ready lab, which we'll take you down to in a few minutes, where kids go through different modules. They do some cooking, they do plumbing, they do drywalling, they learn about parenting, global travel, and tourism. So we're really excited to show you that. Kids really enjoy going to that. We created that as a full-time position, and we do block that. So kids have that back-to-back period, so they have enough time to complete all the activities throughout that. Students are able to choose which modules they go through. The teacher puts them through like an interest survey to see which modules they'd like to go through throughout the year. And so the kids are able to pick that. They work with partners. They change every few weeks. So we're really excited to show you that as well. Can you follow me? Sure. One thing I forgot to mention as we walk through is that we have been using iPads in our building, and we actually have 3 iPad carts that were purchased, one through special ed, one through the foundation, and then also one through the Fuse, Math Fuse with Trish Guinan. So Ms. Zelinsky is our 5th grade teacher, and she uses her iPads a lot in 5th grade, so I will have her talk about how she uses those.
Okay, in 5th grade, I specifically teach reading and writing, and so we use the iPads for workshop stations, for PowerPoint presentations, and for writing uses. So workshop stations, we rotate around to different stations. There's 3 stations in my classroom, and one of the stations is always designated to iPads. So usually the students are working on apps that are specific to parts of speech or figurative language. During writing, the students have writing prompts, and they write their writing prompts out in paper form, and then they transform it into Microsoft Office or Pages on the iPad. And then they also do poster presentations where they try to persuade us to do things based off of the text that we're reading. We also do graphic organizers, being like T-chart notes as we read the stories to identify main idea and supporting details. We do thinking maps through an app called Poplet Light, and the students love making the thinking maps through the Poplet Light because it's so interactive for them, and then they can manipulate it and make it personalized to them with their designs. And then we do PowerPoint presentations where the students do research projects to further their knowledge and background experience with a specific topic, and then they create the presentation and they show it to their class.
Heard you mention a lot of the initiatives that we implemented last year. So you mentioned thinking maps, and so you're using that also with your iPads, corrected reading or reading mastery, depending on what we have. We have the Growing Up Ready lab. So we've done a lot over the past 2 or 3 years now. Any input, any suggestions of what we could do differently as we move forward?
I'm not good with thinking on the spot. I think thinking maps are a great initiative for our students just because I'm seeing the growth of the students through the years and them growing with ease of use and being able to identify which maps they should be using for different skills that we're working on in reading.
If I could just say one thing about the thinking maps, the nice part about the thinking maps is that Ms. Zielinski teaches 5th grade, and if the whole district is using them, and they've used them in 3rd grade, they've used them in 4th grade, by the time they get to Ms. Zielinski, she's not introducing something new to them. She might be expanding upon them, but they've already seen them for multiple years. So that is really helpful that each teacher doesn't have to come up with some graphic organizers that only specific to them, only specific to one subject, but that they're using across the subjects.
Let's talk about PD, district-wide PD. One of the questions that I get asked sometimes is, do principals still have flexibility to create their own PD schedules or agendas? And what do the teachers think about the structured PD that we push out district-wide and what you're doing here at Rolling Acres? Any input as it relates to the variety? Because I know from SIP day to SIP day it changes. And then we have some district-wide professional development. Can you talk about that?
So what we did was our ULT looks at what we need to accomplish for the SIP day. So our interventionists really worked this last PD and put together the agenda as a group, and we look at what kind of team time we need, what we have to do with that team time as far as with our data, which would be just specific to our school. So it really is helpful to have that time where we know in advance that this is going to be an SIP day for Rolling Acres to prepare for, and then we have plenty of competent people here to say these are the needs that we have. This is what we're going to do to accomplish those, and we work all the way to the end on those. So they're really beneficial for us in the building.
So on your professional development, there is teacher input through the ULT on what the subjects are going to be and what is needed, correct?
Correct, and with with the new teacher evaluation tool that we're using, which is taking a lot of my time, I'm in the classrooms a lot, I'm meeting pre-observations, post-observations, observations. I really went to the teachers and said, I really need you to work more to help support the school. So we have our PBIS team, we have our Rising Star team, we have our ULT team, and they're really dictating how the school is run. I'm ultimately in charge of it, but they're really making the decisions about what we need to do. I say to the PBIS, we have chair for those committees, and they're really responsible for implementing what the team decides.
Quick question about the iPads. Did those come to you already loaded up with applications? And to the extent that you need new applications, those
Sure.
applications sometimes cost money. Are you able to keep the technology up with the resources you have? I mean,
So we are able to purchase apps at about a 50% rate because we have a volume voucher, and so we're able. It depends which set of iPads we're talking about. So we had the iPads that were purchased through IDEA, and then we have the iPads that were purchased by the foundation through the grant through the District 150 Foundation, and in that grant was set aside money for apps. So we're able to purchase for that card, and then we have the Math Fuse, that kind of card that we let just because we have them for one special group, we let everybody use them because we're all here together. So we do have money for some apps. I mean, we raise funds. We're in the middle of a fundraiser right now to try and raise money so that when a teacher comes, what I ask them is, if you think this app is worth spending the money on, because it's not just buying a $5 or $10 app for one iPad. You have to buy it for 30. And so it can cost a lot of money. So I asked them to use that app for a little while to see if it's something we really want to invest in. If it is, we get that app.
yes.
We do like the free. We do like
Free
the
on
free apps.
Tuesdays.
That's right. That's right. And one of the apps, I don't know if you're familiar with Khan Academy, where kids can go on there and learn about all different subjects. We had a student last year who was having some struggles, had some absenteeism, so we brought him into the office and were able to put him on that to try and help catch him up, because the guy just explains it line by line as far as the math concept. So that's just one other way we use the iPads.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all Rolling Acres staff and students for their presentation. It was very informative, and I know I speak for all board members. We really appreciate the opportunity to come into your school and learning about what you do, and in particular with the staff, the dedication you give to to the children in District 150 every day. Mr. Cloyd,
I showed up on, I think, the third day of school, and Mr. Barber was kind enough to give me a tour in the midst of getting the school started. I just stopped in for a few minutes, and he gave me a pretty thorough explanation of what was going on, what took place in the building. I really appreciate your time and consideration, and thank you for that.
okay, we're a couple minutes short, I believe, of the budget hearing. Mr. Cloyd, you had a present. Should we just hold off on it until maybe? I think we got one. But we could actually, you know what? Let's move on to that. Let's do remarkable rule number 3: purchase orders of over $2,500. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Kenny? Seeing none, it looks like it's 7 o'clock, as I can see from that clock up there. So rule 658.
The tuition for Hope School and Kiefer School, what is that? Hope and Kiefer, I think it's Kiefer. Okay.
Residential and day treatment for our IEP students or other facilities that they identify towards.
That's what I figured.
Okay, we'll move on to the budget hearing. We need a motion and a second to move into the budget hearing.
I move that we move into the budget hearing as required by law.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Patel? Aye. Mr. Cloyd?
Aye.
Mrs. Oldmeyer? Mrs. Costick? Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
Turn it over to do public. Okay, members of the audience are welcome to come here and sit at the one of the 2 chairs we have arranged, and your comment on the budget. Your comments will be limited to the topic of the budget, and the duration of the comments can last no more than 5 minutes.
Terry Knapp, 922 West Wilshire Drive, Peoria, Illinois. I want to thank Dr. Kenny for his presentation to me. One of the voters, I believe it was last Saturday, was outstanding. I think everybody appreciated your comments, and it was a very nice service for the district to provide that time for the public. He fielded a lot of questions, gave a lot of answers, and anybody who didn't get their questions answered surely missed the opportunity. And thank you again. A couple things that I wanted to mention. In the long-term capital development plan, if you have a 5-year plan, I think it's important that the public is aware of it. As we talk about the stadium development at Central and the selling of Peoria Stadium, I know nobody wants to comment about that. I don't understand why, because everybody I talk to in Peoria that knows anything about anything knows that this is going to go. And the money's already been provided by the state, blah, 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 blah. I mean, this is what I've been told by several different people. So, well, I'm just sharing with you, but if it is, in fact, it reminds me of when Mr. Hinton was here, and Guy Cahill was the comptroller, and they went out and bought the properties on Prospect Road, which you still own, took them off the tax rolls. The only people that had lived there for the most part were the Chinese teachers, and they left a long time ago. Some of those are ready to be torn down, and we really missed an opportunity to involve the public. After we bought the properties, as you all know, the city government and the people in that neighborhood got involved, and the whole thing was changed location to where it is today. I think it's very important that the public gets a chance to buy in to those types of decisions. And if that is out there, the public should be involved sooner rather than later on that particular capital development, as all capital developments. The other thing I'd like to mention, at the last meeting, I believe, and I think I heard this right, for 2012, you are anticipating $18 million in health care for your employees. This is part of the budget, as I understand it. In 2000, I gave each one of you this paper, this scribble basically, but it kind of gives you an idea where I'm going. In 2000, when I was president of the Teachers Union, was head of the insurance committee, basically we were spending $3 million for health care for our employees. We had more employees, we were spending significantly less, which we understand healthcare is just out of control. But one of the things that I wanted to mention to you, because I spent 3 or 4 years on committees with Senator Kaler, who had a symposium down at the Riverplex and talked about health care with 100 people, and then spun into meetings with the different care providers and hospitals and so forth. But in 2000, 1 million was indigent care. That means that we pay for the people who go and take their children, don't have insurance, take an emergency room. Eventually that comes back to insurance people, Caterpillar, School District, Keystone, whoever might have insurance pays an inflated price. So whereas if I were to go in 2000 to get a hospital room, it would cost me $1,000 per day for that hospital room. Actually, the actual cost was $600, but they charged me $1,000 so that they could defer and pay these loose bills out there. In 2012, that's going to be $6 million. That money comes from your ed fund. I think it's ludicrous that somehow school districts get taxed. As a teacher, I think it's egregious. And I made that point at all the committee meetings that I attended, one a month for 3 or 4 years. This is important that you understand this, because as this goes up, I mean, it's like the teachers are getting this huge benefit. Well, they're getting 12 million of the 18 million. They're not getting 18 million, they're getting 12 million. And it's important that you understand that and be able to somehow conceptualize and work within our community to somehow lessen that burden. I don't know if President Obama's insurance program is going to help alleviate this. I have no idea. I don't know how that works. But I just wanted to mention those two things relative to the budget. But definitely this 18 million is significant, growing from 3 million in year 2000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Cheryl Budzinski, and I would like to thank Dr. Kenny and Chris and Mike for spending their Saturday last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, explaining the budget at the League of Women Voters meeting. It was open to the public, and I wanted to give you feedback on something that I thought was very positive, which was he stated some of the things that you've changed this year that make Peoria and the school system look better to outsiders, to young people who have families who might come into this area. And I think presenting the positives and all the changes and looking to do the air conditioning to be competitive. I thought that was a very good part of the presentation, and I do want to thank you for letting us use the room also. He did answer a lot of questions, 2.5 hours he spent with all of us, and it was a well-attended meeting. I guess my question that's still kind of floating out there is about the interest rate of the bonds, and Dr. Kenny said he has looked into that, but I know that some of the other governing bodies refinance their terms. You've got some at 9%, some at 6 or 6.75%, and I would hope as a cost saving you would look at that particular area. But thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Budzinski, real quick, are you going to put a card out? This was your presentation? Okay, thank you. Any other comments while the budget hearing is still open?
Sereno Sierra. I live at 1708 South Stanley on the far south side. I read in the paper where the treasurer there said that they were going to build a stadium over around Central, but they're going to develop a track for running in that. I think it's sad that we can't maintain our physical plants. I don't know if you allowed money in your budget for these improvements in that, our physical plants. I just went to the men's restroom here at this nice school. My granddaughter went here, and there's a leak in one of the basins in the faucet. The cold water is squirting out of the base. Also, that's the first sink. Also, the third and last one, the fixture is loose. You can take it and move it, you know. Some kid that's kind of mischievous, he can rip that off easy. This is what I say, you people don't take care of our physical
Sierra,
plans.
if you could, limit your comments to the budget.
Yeah, well, this I'm asking.
Well, I think you're talking.
I'm asking you if you have any money in the budget to take care of these things.
We do. We have a general maintenance operation
Well,
fund.
then I say we should take care of
Mr. Sierra,
this.
if you may, please limit your comments to the budget.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're going to use money for a stadium, I think the money we have, and that was in the budget that you discussed, we should renovate the present Peoria Stadium. We're spending too much money on trying to build new stuff and all that. You know, we're going to be in a hole. Your grandkids, your great-grandkids are going to be having to pay for all this, you know. I don't know when you people are going to wake up on this budget deal, you know what I mean? It's really a shame. It's really a shame that there's so many important things, and we're still trying to find money to build new stuff. And this is what I'm telling you, that as far as the budget goes, we're spending money where it could be used for our education of our children, or renovation of our old physical plants that are standing, because that's important. And so think about it. Think about that stadium plan, you know, that you have in the budget. It's going to cost you more to build a new one. You have to have bathrooms. You have to have electricity, all that stuff, you know. That doesn't come cheap, you know. And this is the present stadium is still standing, and all it needs is a little dressing up. And we should be proud of that same, because that stadium is going to be standing long before, after you're dead. And all you people are younger than I am. And so this is something to think about when you talk a budget. And this is what I have to say. And I'm no dummy, you know. I don't have to have a degree to have common sense to know, you know, where to spend your money. I worked in the trades, the skilled trades for 50 years. And I'm telling you that present stadium can be renovated to that we can be proud of. And so with that, I'll leave you.
Any other comments for tonight's budget hearing? Oh yeah. I'm just waiting to see if there's any more other comments. No? Okay. Mr. Floyd or Ms. Patel? Whoever.
Okay, and Dr. Kinney, in reference to the issue of refinancing, and I know you and I have discussed that several times, as I understand it, part of the condition of some of the bonds that we've issued does not allow us to call those bonds early. In other words, to refinance them at a lower rate, because those were conditions of the bond covenants when they were issued. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. That is my understanding. They're not callable until towards the very end. And if you'll recall, last winter we did go through a process where we were able to refinance, but it was the tail end of some of those bonds. So we've looked at it, and we'll continue to see what we can do. But you're right, there is a feature there.
And that means if we had issued them at the time with the call provision, we probably would have had to pay a higher interest rate because they would be demanded by the people that were purchasing the bonds.
Right.
So in exchange for a lower interest rate, we gave up the right to call the bonds early at a lower interest rate prevailing at a later date.
Right.
Thank you.
Ms. Patel?
Trying to think of how to say this in a way that won't get me in trouble. I do not know anything about the state issuing money for any kind of stadium renovation. I think it is ludicrous and irresponsible for people to stand up and put these rumors forward, because Peoria runs on backdoor rumors, and that is something we have been trying to get rid of on the school board, doing things properly by the right process, not through backdoor deals and who you know, but doing things the way they're supposed to be done. And encouraging people to engage in that way, I have a problem with that. And if we are going to have these conversations publicly and as a deliberative body, it really undermines that when people are coming forward talking about all of these rumors that are floating around that people who have nothing to do with this are sitting out there putting forward and claiming they know our agenda. And it backs us into a corner on some occasions, not in this one because I don't know anything about this one, but it's really problematic, and I wish that people would not perpetuate these rumors that have no basis to them, and then it will frequently end up the leading story, and then it's out there, and then that's all anyone's talking about, instead of the actual issues we are actually facing in this district. And in this particular budget, which are legion, and which we do have many capital development issues to address, that is not currently one.
Dr. Layton, I believe you get some. Okay. Dr. Kinney, anything to add?
Well, I think if we're going to talk about any issues with the stadium, it's my job, I see, to do as much homework as I can when we talk about, potential renovation. What's the cost? Is there a value to it? I mean, I think there have been discussions out there publicly for a couple of years that the district might be interested in selling the stadium. I can tell you that nobody's reached any conclusion about that particular topic, but if we're going to go down that road, I would agree it needs to be a very public process, and I would also agree that we have a lot of homework to do, that we need to do, so that these 7 people can make an intelligent decision. And I think that it would be interesting to look at that information. So I think, first of all, we have to have a process. I think that's most important.
Any other comments?
Just to put it on the record, Dr. Kinney, the budget amounts that were presented in the August 27th tentative budget are the ones that we're dealing with here at this point. And none of those have changed, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then that means then, as I read this, that the total expenditure forecast right now is the $189,524.
Yeah, that's including the $15 million, I believe, on behalf
payments,
right,
which are made by the state of Illinois on behalf of us. We never receive the cash, and then they charge us in effect for that. So it's a non-cash transaction. And the revenue difference between expenditure and income forecast in this budget is a negative $3,989,000. So it's a forecast of roughly a $4 million deficit on a total of $189 million roughly in expenditures.
And that is, those numbers are not including any expenditures that we would make on capital projects from funds received last spring. Now, I will qualify that as to, when we talked about that, I think we budgeted like $5,144,000 in capital projects. $3 million of that is basically dealing with Wi-Fi, and that's $3 million we need in order to complete the Wi-Fi process through the E-rate. We'll spend probably about $7 million on Wi-Fi throughout the district, $3 million of ours, and that's part of that. We have to do some life safety work. That'll be part of it. We've already done some things over the summer. And I guess bottom line, when I talk about $5,144,000, we're not talking about anything to either rebuild the current Peoria Stadium or build a stadium anywhere else. That's not part of that.
And just to sort of summarize this, as I recall, we have cut expenses by about $4 million, and the gap really is that our revenue, because of differences in payments from the state, has gone down $8 million plus reduced valuation of property in the area. So that would both of those would contribute to that.
Right. Within the categorical grants, we're down, I believe, about $700,000 if I recall the numbers. $5.1 million we're down in general state aid. We're down in the property, the replacement taxes, and yes, and that's a state program. And yes, property values have gone down too. So, yeah, the shortfall is on the revenue side. There's no doubt about it, and the bulk of that is state funding that state's not going to meet.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Kenny? Seeing none, I believe we can. I entertain a motion and a second to close tonight's budget hearing. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Ms. Patel? Aye. Mrs. Ross? Mr. Floyd? Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye.
Mrs. Costick? Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries.
We're back in regular session. All right. Okay, that will move us on to tonight's consent agenda. Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, sir. Item number 1 on the consent agenda is gifts to the school district. This meeting totaling $7,178, and the year-to-date total is $11,475. This includes gifts from Kroger, the First Church of Peoria, Sam's Club, In the News, L'Oreal Page, Bradley University, Gary Larson, Fred and Kelly Wallace, and CityLink, as well as individual donations of softball equipment by, it appears to be about a dozen contributors, and we thank them for that. Item number 2 is the payment of bills. Item number 3 is the Human Resources Report. Proposed action is the appointment, employment, compensation, performance, resignation, retirement, or discharge of an employee. Item number 4 is travel requests. Item number 5, resolution for the potential sale of the cell tower lease rights. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the administration to work with Landmark Dividends to transfer the assignment of District 150's interest and associated net revenue for the cell tower located at 2503 North University for the sum of $210,000. Upon the establishment of clear title and receipt of necessary due diligence items, Landmark Dividends would be able to purchase those leased rights, with $200,000 going to District 150 and $10,000 going to Quest. Item number 6, Rain Garden Agreement. The proposed action is that the Board of Education enter into an agreement with the City of Peoria to use property on the northwest side of the Leska-Hinton Early Childhood Education Center to build a rain garden. This is a joint project with the City of Peoria and Peoria Neighborhood Association. Item number 7, application for recognition of schools. The proposed action is that the 2012-2013 application for recognition of schools be approved for each of the schools of the district. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Would any board member like for one of these items on tonight's consent agenda to be pulled for a separate vote? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Any discussion? Floyd?
Yes, the word enter is missing in line item 6, and I believe that verb's necessary to make that an actual agreement, so that the Board of Education, I read it as enter, but that the Board of Education enter into an agreement, so I think that has to be amended. Is that correct?
What does it say on the actual item? No, I mean,
On the actual item itself, that
It's the same thing.
So we'll withdraw the motion. I mean,
okay, so as amended,
we will be voting. I can just state for the record, we will be voting on the item as amended.
okay, and then, Dr. Kinney, I know you and I have had some discussion on this one too, and that is, could you explain the purpose and the rationale behind the cell tower lease sale?
We were approached about selling our lease rights. Annually, we get $20,600, and Quest gets $1,000 in payments from the cell tower company. This is a situation where a company has come and offered to buy us out of that lease, and we looked at it. We thought long and hard about it. We've asked some local investors to look at the proposal, and all the word that we got back was this was a good deal for us. Essentially, we're going to get the money up front instead of annually. It's basically a 10-year payout to us, getting the money up front, and we just felt like it was a deal worth pursuing, and we brought it to the board.
And just for the record, I did some analysis on that too, and from a discounted cash flow basis, it looked like a pretty good deal. The discount rate was reasonable, and you get all your money up front, and you can use it.
Ms. Patel.
And at the end of the 10-year period, what occurs with that cell tower?
The investment company owns the rights to whatever future revenue would come.
And because that is on, that's on the Louts.
Right.
And so, because we have sold that.
When we sold Laux, we sold it with us keeping the rights to the cell tower revenue. So this, in essence, adds $200,000 to that particular situation. So, yeah, and I guess part of my thinking is, who knows what technology is going to be like in 10 years. So are we, possibly getting a better payout than what we might have? Certainly that's a consideration too.
Any other questions, comments on tonight's items on the consent agenda?
Just for my knowledge, what, Dr. Lathan, is the application for recognition of schools?
Annually, principals are required to give some assurances to the state. So they're asked to answer 7 questions for the state. Number 1 is that they answer questions about the paraprofessionals that are in their building, the non-certified staff members that are working with with students. They also assure that we're providing an equal opportunity as it relates to educational programming for our students. And so they're just telling the state that we're in compliance and following the school code.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Seeing none, with item 6 as amended, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Ms. Patel? Aye. Mr. Floyd? Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye.
Mrs. Costick? Aye. Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
That takes us to tonight's deliberation agenda. Ms. Patel.
Excuse me. Item number 8 is the revocation of board probation. The proposed action is that the revocation of board probation listed on the report dated September 10th, 2012 be approved as presented.
Actually, shouldn't be tonight's date.
What is today's?
24th. And actually, I don't think you have to worry about doing it as an amended because the motion is actually what you read, not what's written on here. So we can change it without amending it.
So shall I reread it with
Yeah.
24 in there? Okay. The proposed action is that the revocation of board probation listed on the report dated September 24th, 2012 be approved as presented.
Second.
Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Ms. Patel?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd? Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye.
Mrs. Costi? Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
Item number 9 is expulsions. The proposed action is that the expulsions listed on the report dated September 24th, 2012 be approved as presented.
Second.
Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Ms. Patel?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd? Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye.
Mrs. Costi? Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
Item number 10, budget resolution. That the Board of Education approve the following resolution. Whereas the Board of Education, I'll read them. Whereas the Board of Education of Peoria School District 150, County of Peoria, State of Illinois, caused to be prepared for a tentative budget, and the Secretary of the Board has made the same conveniently available to public inspection for at least 30 days prior to final action thereon. And whereas a public hearing was held as to such budget on the 24th day of September 2012, notice of said hearing was given at least 30 days prior thereto, required by law, and all other legal requirements have been complied with. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of said district as follows, that the budget containing an estimate of amounts available in each fund separately and the expenditures from each be and the same is hereby adopted as the budget of this school district for the 2012-2013 fiscal year.
So moved.
Any discussion? Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Ms. Patel?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd? Aye. Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye.
Mrs. Costi? Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion carried.
Dr. Lathan, any response to audience presentation?
Just that, actually last week, PFT leadership and Ms. Johnson and I actually presented at the Advanced Illinois conference on our new teacher evaluation instrument that we rolled out this year. We have a formal presentation scheduled in October to present it to the board. We're glad and excited that we worked together last year, or actually over the past 2 years, to create an instrument that would benefit not only our teachers, but our principals and help our teachers to grow. And so we're planning to continue to follow that. We also have the student growth component, which is, I think, one of the things that they were discussing and in a disagreement about is the amount or the percentage. This minimum requirement for the state is 30%, and Manual and Peoria High, as a requirement of their school improvement grant, must implement the student growth component this year. And so that team is also working on that. So we plan to, of course, follow the state requirements, but the next 2 years is basically no stakes as it relates to the student growth piece, and we'll do that. But we're going to continue to work together here in the district so that we can make sure that our teachers are growing. And I believe at this point, everyone has finished their BYCs. If not, we're kind of finishing them up this week. But we're excited about the progress that we made. So we are not CPS, and we're not trying to go there. We're off to a great start in the district.
Thank you, Dr. Lathan. Mr. Floyd?
Yes, Dr. Lathan, has Mr. Vallis ever been employed by or consulted with the Peoria Public School District?
Not since I've been here.
Has he ever been employed by or consulted with Peoria District 150? Has he
No,
ever?
not that I'm aware of, no.
Has any of his philosophies ever been espoused or recommended by any member of this Board of Education?
No.
So anything that has to do with Mr. Vallis or any of his philosophies has no bearing or anything involved with what we're doing with evaluation of teachers. Is that correct?
No, because we had an actual committee that created the new teacher evaluation instrument and actually had more probably teachers on it than it did central office administrators.
So any comments about Mr. Vallis and any attempts to associate Mr. Vallis with this school district are completely and without merit?
Right. If anything you're going to associate with me with Charlotte Danielson, because we used her framework to build the Peoria framework for teaching.
Thank you.
That brings us to presentation and suggestions by board members. Ms. Wolfmeyer.
Yes, we had, and Ms. Patel, jump in here if I missed something. We had, from the discipline committee, we had a couple of things come up in discussion tonight that we wanted to bring to light for the administration and also for the board. The first one is we have some concerns with the amount of time it's taking to get the paperwork done on children who are especially not only suspensions but have had expellable offenses. As- we're under the impression that, let's say, let's give an example of a fight that happened last week, that there's still no paperwork in on that. We need a quicker turnaround from the schools so that we can deal with these children. If they need to be out of the building, we can get them out of the building. If we need to have, and I don't know what the direction has been given to the buildings, how long they've been given, but if it's 4 or 5 days, we feel like that's too long. Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
But also keep in mind, and we can use an example like last week, we have to still conduct an investigation.
I
and
understand.
So all of that is a part of the paperwork that has to be submitted, and we want a complete package, because what happens if they rush, they'll send bits and pieces, and it still has to go back. I agree with you, especially the situation that we had at one of our schools last week. Our main goal is to get those students out that are causing problems, that don't want to learn, and it's a small group. But we want to make sure, though, we've afforded those students their due process rights. And at times, sometimes that's where we make our mistakes, when we try to rush through it. So just in response, I know the situation last week, we're trying to find out what that is.
So, I mean, the problem for teachers is when we have a student who's been involved, particularly in something violent or threatening, and they could be suspended for 10 days, and sometimes it takes longer than that.
If they're
for the
not special
paperwork.
education.
If they're not special, but sometimes it takes longer than that to get the paperwork back and get them out of school permanently. And maybe this is a question for Mr. Luizzi. What options do we have, while respecting the students' due process rights, to not return them to a classroom where they have made threats against a teacher or another student, or been violent against another student?
Does that fall under the 45-day? Oh, that's only special ed. Okay.
Special ed rule. You don't have a lot of options. The school code is very specific that once you go past 10 days, that's considered an expulsion. And you can't expel a student without giving him his full due process rights. The only option that you may have would be to work with the parents and come up with an agreement that would keep the student out voluntarily while you guys complete the investigation, and talk to the parents about maybe that would be the best situation, cooling down period, to let it go. But you can talk to us further about this, but the school code is very clear.
Then maybe this is a discussion that we need to have with Representative Gordon about clearly a lack in the Illinois law that would allow us to respect these students' rights, but give us enough time to complete an investigation without returning.
Another option, short of putting them out of school, is probably something you guys already do called safety plans.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the other issue, but they're still in the building.
Because I think, I mean, that's a problem we've had since I've come on the board, and I think we're not given a great way to deal with it, and maybe we have gotten to the point where we need to approach the state and say we need to.
And I guess I would still urge you that 10 days is 2 weeks, and see if there isn't some way that we can speed up an investigation. I mean, I know you want to make sure all the ducks are in a row, but I also think it's important that the schools and our SROs understand that there is an urgency in this.
Prime example, I'd say by Thursday evening, prior to making it back in town from Champaign, the principal had already emailed me his concerns and what we're going to do about those students that continue to cause problems. And so immediately we said, get the paperwork together. Once again, we have to follow the due process right. I think it's great that you're bringing it up so the public knows we will not tolerate students that are disruptive. And it is a small number, and I want to make sure the public understands. But we want to do it right, so that once again we can remove those students that are preventing other children from learning. And I just don't want us to make any mistakes. But immediately like I said, that afternoon, once I think the building was cleared out and they had started, the principal already sent me information with his concerns.
The second thing that we talked about was, and I think we started out with this idea with the children who are placed at Woodruff, especially in what we're calling now the safe school side, is that they earn their way back to their home school. I think we talked about that concept. I don't know if we've been able to implement that or not. I know, and to go along with that, what we also would like to see is that, because a lot of times the students are put there for like first semester, we would like to see if it's possible and legally if those before they go back to their home school if the discipline committee needs to approve that first. And then along with that, we would like to, if it's possible, start seeing some reports to see what kind of progress those students are making, particularly the ones who have been placed at Woodruff because of discipline issues in other schools. Are they still getting in trouble? Are they doing any better? Because we don't always know about all the suspensions and things like that unless it gets to the point of expulsion. And are the things that we're putting in place down there working? If not, do we need to look at them? And
also, students who are placed on probation at their home school who succeed in the probation, come off probation, we would love to see an end of semester list of students who have successfully completed their board probation without any further problems, because we see the students who then come back for expulsion, but we don't see the students who succeed. And I think I would like to see that and see how we're succeeding and what sorts of offenses do well with that and so on.
does that make sense? Okay.
Our new principal has that information and some things that we need to work on and address, and we'll be working through that.
Okay. And then the last thing is, one of the things we discussed is, particularly when it comes to the kids who are involved in the fights and the big fights, and Mr. Louisi, maybe you can answer this, but our question was, we always look at semesters or years for expulsion. It just seems like, as we see these kids getting expelled and put on a bans from a regular school and then being placed at Woodruff, then they're still getting in trouble at Woodruff. So obviously going to Woodruff is not much of a deterrent. So we would like to look at, and if the board feels like this is something to pursue, the policy committee can look at pursuing expulsion for a grading period.
You're saying 9 weeks at a time?
If instead of for a whole semester, as a deterrent.
Yeah, but then we're getting, especially at the high, as I said, now I'm going to be a high school person. When you're talking about expelling for a grading period of time, and then the student coming back in, getting readjusted back into their home school or going back to Woodruff. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying about being expelled for a grading period. From Woodruff
we're
or
looking,
their home school?
Well, I think from Woodruff. We're looking at something that needs to be a deterrent to some of these children. Obviously, just being placed at Woodruff isn't a deterrent. Then if they're getting into the same kind of problems at Woodruff, if let's say, I mean, we do it really because we'll do it second semester for the remainder of a school year. So I think what we're saying is that we need to start taking a harder look at, especially when they get in trouble again at Woodruff, at putting them out. Even if it's first semester, maybe it's for a grading period rather than the rest of the whole year. And then they would come back to Woodruff, not to their home school. But we've got to find something that is going to be more of a deterrent to these children, because they're going, the same behaviors are happening at Woodruff. Obviously, I really think some kids have the attitude, oh, well, I get in trouble, I'll go to Woodruff. Big deal. And we've got to find some way to address that. So those are just some things that came up in our discussion we thought we'd share with you, with the rest of the board. Don't know if they have any merit, if they'll work. Obviously, there'll be problems and that.
But I also think we need some guidance from our attorneys that there are some students that one grading period is not going to get it, or a semester.
No, but I think we should have some different options.
Right, but different options, but at some point, though, as a board and as a district, we have to send a message that, we've afforded you this opportunity to go to Woodruff. We've invested a lot in renovations at Woodruff, but I have to be honest, you're right, they just go to Woodruff, but they're not truly invested in being at Woodruff, getting themselves together and getting back to their home. Now, that's just my opinion and my observation.
I think that's what we're seeing.
We need to tighten it up, and so some options sometimes need to be taken away, because all of us know on our jobs, if we don't get it together, if we're violent, we curse people out and do different things, we lose our jobs. So when do we start sending a message to parents? Because part of it is also parents being involved. I mean, we're putting some additional measures in place now. Students are wearing uniforms there. And the high school students don't like that. But you know what? You're not at your home high school. You made a choice to break the rules, and you're here. So, I mean, I think we're talking about some of the same things, but I think we also need to be a little bit more stricter at some of the things we're doing.
And I think tonight, all but one of the children that were expelled were from Woodruff. And I think the majority of them are actually out for the first semester, out of school completely. And I think that's what we're going to have to start doing in order to send a message to not only the children, but you're right, the parents, that if your child is not going to behave, then you're going to deal with them at home instead of us dealing with them at school.
There's been a change in administration at Woodruff, and I'd like to be able to give him an opportunity to see if he can make a change or make a difference in what is going on there. And then we, if nothing changes, then we can try to move forward. But at this particular point in time, there's going to be some changes made at that school. There's going to be changes in the way that he administrates. So I see to give Mr. Olson an opportunity to do what he does best. And then, if everything goes great, then fine. If not, then we move forward.
And I agree with that, except that at this point it's Mr. Olson who is recommending these children for expulsion. So it's coming from him. These disciplines we're getting now are coming from him at his recommendation. So these are recent ones. So, I mean, I understand, like the ones tonight we had no problem with, and I understand, but I think we need to start looking forward. If things get better, fine. We won't have to implement anything differently. But I will tell you, as a board member, I don't have a problem with these children who just will not behave, making them stay home for a semester. I really don't. We've got to take into consideration at some point the children who want to learn and who are going to be there to learn. And if we wait another semester or another year to recognize that, those kids are the ones that are hurting.
And remember, we have 2 programs at Woodruff also. So we have our students that are expelled, but we also have the alternative education side where students just need an alternative setting. So we want to make sure that it's a place for those students and that those students can be successful. Some are going to choose not to go back to their home school. So we want to make sure that they're receiving the best in educational programming as well.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, sir. If no one has anything else. On the 13th of September, I visited with the administration at Pekin Community High School. Mr. Knapp suggested I make that visit and find out a few things about what was being done there, particularly in response to their alternative high school. And they were most gracious to set up an appointment. I met on the 13th of September, which was 2 weeks ago Thursday. Met with Paula Davis, who's the superintendent, Danielle Owens, who's the assistant superintendent, and Melissa Bloom, who's the principal, and I might add a Peoria High School graduate. They have an alternative high school. Pekin Community High School has about 2,000 students and 6 primary feeder schools. Right now there are about 30 students in Pekin's alternative program. They take an online course in a dedicated classroom on district computers in the administration office there, which has a number of classrooms. Students are on site for 3 hours a day and take 1 class at a time, and they use Apex software. There's an alternative program placement based on recommendations from teachers, advisors, deans, or even student requests. Students are not placed there until at least the 2nd semester of freshman year or later. And one of the things they talk about is that many of these students have a very different time frame for their schooling, where a regular semester schedule just doesn't fit with their life or the way of thinking. And rather than just have them left completely behind, this is one way to get them involved in an educational environment that seems to work with them. There are 50 seats available, but right now they only have 30 students. And they're finding that the enrollment in their program has declined in recent years, and they attribute it to the use of RTI and individual advisory periods during the school day. There's a contract between parents and students to enter the program, and they place a lot of emphasis on acceptable behavior, and they see themselves as swift and strict in applying campus rules. It's also rare for a student to move back in the regular classroom after that placement, and they do have other types of programs available and classes available that aren't part of the alternative curriculum. The population tends to be a bit older, and what they're finding is that the student population is more passive and less disruptive than they experienced earlier in the program. They don't have a good reason for that other than it seems to be just the social environment that they come from. And the district also uses Skyward for attendance, and they use Blackboard for teaching an online history program. They do not use Compass Learning, Pinpoint, or Rosetta Stone. Their technical education organization and facilities are very impressive, and if you've not visited them, I would encourage you to go do so. It's quite well developed, and I would say that is something that we're in the early stages of in the career and technical portion at Woodruff, and we could certainly take a lot of lesson from the way they are doing their work in vocational education. And they have a number of professionals who do not hold a teacher's certificate but can be retained under a provisional vocational certificate. For example, someone who's been in the automotive repair business for 30 years can qualify for that. And apparently the students take a great deal of they place high esteem on these people for their straight talk and basically unchallengeable technical knowledge, so that they carry a lot of weight with the students. That was the second topic. The third topic was Pekin has had one classroom in chemistry using a flipped schedule. They're doing this for the second year, and I know that Havana High School is doing that as well. I'd like to visit them, but one chemistry teacher has done this. They're in their second year. She videotaped podcasts of lectures, and these are available online. Homework assignments are done during the class periods. Students seem to like the process, but it's only one class, and she said that several other teachers are dabbling with this. They do have some after-school workshops to help other teachers who are experimenting with it. It does require a great deal of parental contact, and they've arranged for online access for students who do not have that at home. And students can access podcasts during the study hall or advisory periods. Now, one other thing, and we talked about technology some time ago, and they're moving into a bring-your-own-device environment and using student smartphones for some class response systems, which is an interesting concept, and I'm sure as we move further into the iPad and wireless world, that's going to be something to think about. And they have people involved in technology there that might be able to give us an idea or two about that. So a little bit of a lengthy report. I've written up 2 pages. I've given it to Dr. Lathan, and I think if you'd like to get a copy of it, I would be happy to have Ms. Bastian provide it to you. So very interesting. They were very cordial, and I appreciated the time, and it was a good learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd.
Can I just ask a question? Board of Education 101. What
Yes,
program do we have in our district that offers students an alternative learning environment of 3 hours of instruction, computer-based? Knoxville Center for Success. Thank you. So we use Compass as opposed to Apex. We did years ago in our district use Apex. Compass is just another different version.
Right.
We do have a program in District 150.
Thank you for that. Thank you for making that point, ma'am. Appreciate that.
Anyone else for comments for either for the presentations made by Ms. Wolfmeyer, Ms. Patel, or Mr. Floyd? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports from board committees. Any reports? Ms. Wolfmeyer.
And I don't know if Mr. Cloyd knows this yet, but our policy committee tomorrow is canceled because I have to go out of town. So we'll try and reschedule it for next week. I'll get with you and set up a time.
And we are still recruiting parent members for our parent and teacher members for our parent-teacher advisory council. We hope to meet in the first week of October.
All right. Ms. Dr. Lathan.
One last announcement. Parent University this Thursday at Glen Oak. It starts at 5:30, so it runs from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. We have workshops available for our parents, so please come out to Glen Oak on Thursday, September 27th for our first Parent University, or actually our second event of the year. And also College Bound Peoria kicks off on Thursday night.
Again, thank you to Mr. Barber, the staff, and students at Rolling Acres for hosting us tonight. May I have a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned. I'd like to call the Peoria Public Schools District 150 Board of Education Committee of the whole meeting of September 24th, 2012 to order. Would you please call the roll? Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any announcements this evening? Just one for housekeeping matters. The budget hearing tonight is scheduled for 7 p.m. We will move through the board's business, and then at 7 p.m. we will suspend whatever we're doing on the meeting and conduct the budget hearing at that time. Next, yes, Ms. Casa.
Good evening. Just wanted to let everyone know that a couple meetings ago, there were teachers that came before the board and expressed what a great thing their PD training was for IP. I had a teacher personally contact me in regards to how excited they are in regards to the program. So we know that what was learned is being put in place, and the children in her classroom are so excited. So if there's any teachers out there and they've implemented it, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Ms. Kosick. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our last meeting of September 10th, 2012. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. That moves us, takes us down to remarkable rule number 2, respect for learning, talking about the Northmore garden project. And growing up.
Good evening. Ms. Malahi, principal for Northmore K-4 school, is here. Back in 2010, Northmore applied for a community foundations grant so that they could create a teaching garden at Northmore. And so they're here to talk about what's been going on the past 2 years and just to give us an update. Thank you.
Thank you. I am here also with Northmore parent, Mr. Todd Abercrombie, and he actually has been on board with the outdoor classroom project longer than I have, as I became principal last fall. So we just wanted to outline just a little bit of the history behind it and where we are and where we plan to go.
So when the construction on Northmore it was finished in 2010, it created a courtyard in the center of it that was open to the sky. So it created an opportunity for growing some plants and to put a learning landscape in. So the principal at the time introduced it to the PTO meeting at the time, and to be honest, it was my first PTO meeting I'd ever been to. I had been inspired by a book, read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, and thought I need to be involved in my children's school. Hence, there I was at the meeting, and having known a lot of people in the area that are involved in landscaping and things like that, I thought, hey, I can bring some resources to this project, so I volunteered for it. So in the fall of 2010, the committee of staff and parents was set up to create the outdoor classroom. The vision was to provide students with a opportunity to interact with nature and to integrate lessons from the teachers, particularly like in science and math, into the garden. And we have received some funds to help fund it. The Community Foundation donated some money in the fall of 2010 for materials and supplies, stock tanks to be used for raised planting beds were purchased. In addition, donations from the city of Peoria in the form of 3 rain barrels, the same rain barrels the city has been selling to homeowners. And also the Peoria Garden Club included a bench and a bird bath. And in the spring of 2011, with kind of a groundbreaking, we had gotten some trees donated and got those planted in that landscape. So, over to you.
The initial plans included a sundial that was going to be integrated into the plan. It was a little bit of a challenge because we had a slope and we were looking at concrete work, so that kind of caused some time to take a pause and step back. So over the summer, several of us went and started visiting some other outdoor classrooms in the area. We went to Germantown Hills Middle School, which has a very nice garden, and several others in the area. Started talking and seeing what this was all about and how we could best use it for us at Northmore. And actually through those visits, probably more importantly, was the connections we made. We've got connections now with the Peoria Area Master Gardeners, Peoria Garden Club, and then also the developers of the Germantown Hills Middle School outdoor classroom, and they are willing to provide the expertise that we lack, the information about soil, plant placement, and low maintenance so that we can make things very manageable. Even silly things as simple as an economical irrigation system using soaker hoses and a timer. We don't want custodial staff to be in charge of this. The only responsibility custodial staff would have would be to maintain the grass in the area which they currently maintain, and it would just be mowing that as they mow right now. All of the gardens would be sustained and maintained by families who are committed. As we can see, even 2 years later, we still have families on board. It's still a PTO agenda item. We will have students also getting out there and working with it as far as planting, developing, maintaining. Staff is very much on board. We look at to have weekend family work days so that we can go ahead and keep things nice and tidy. We envision vegetable beds, flower beds, butterfly gardens. We want things that are going to be interesting as far as, the typical science activities, but in addition, we want to show life cycles. We envision a small pond, and also we want things that are going to offer winter interest for birds and something to look at other than just the grass.